future is what we make it, we can make it.
Jesse, welcome back to Real Vision. You were on, I think, two and a half years ago. I think Tour interviewed you.
Yeah, we did that in San Francisco, and I remember because we did it in this building that was street level, and there was like a motorcycle going by every other minute, and we had to do so many retakes. It was insane.
Where are you now? Where are you talking from today?
I'm in Los Angeles today.
Oh, okay, great. So, look, for some people who haven't seen that original interview, I'd just like to spend a bit of a short time, because I like to do it with everybody, just a little bit of their journey, into the crypto world and just where they came from. Because what's great about this space, it's not like the Wall Street space where basically everybody did the same thing. It's super eclectic. So,
yeah, the space is growing. The diversity of participants is growing. We're seeing, just in the last few months with all of the insanity happening in the traditional markets and with all the money printing and everything, I think there's a newfound interest among the more conservative traditional investor class, who's now kind of realizing that maybe something that can't be printed to infinity could actually have some value. So signups across the board, though, have been up many multiples over the last few months. So I think just broadly, people are starting to take more notice of Bitcoin.
what was the story that got you into Bitcoin in the beginning? Because it's always a narrative that gets us in. What was the narrative that got you in?
Yeah, so I had just randomly read about Bitcoin somewhere on some blog on the internet. And prior to Kraken, I had a company in the virtual goods industry selling World of Warcraft gold and RuneScape gold and Diablo items and all of this stuff. The company was called Loot. We did like 20 different games at one time. And, that was from 2001. I started that while I was in college. And we just, we're already basically in the business of virtual currency. And so I read about Bitcoin. I was like, oh, this is cool. Maybe this is another virtual currency we can just sell on the website. We had an e-commerce platform, with everything else. But as I got more into it, I read the white paper. This is 2011. There was already a lot of stuff on the Bitcoin Talk forums. There'd already been quite a bit written about it. At that time, you could actually read everything that there was. These days, you just can't keep up, no matter how hard you try. So I just went down the rabbit hole and read everything that there was about it and became much more intrigued with the philosophical implications of it, the social implications, the fact that it was completely decentralized. And I was aware of other kind of attempts at alternative currencies like e-gold in the past, which had ultimately been shut down by the government. And I always thought that, an independent global currency would be great to have. And we were already aware that people were using virtual currencies in the video game world. People were trading World of Warcraft gold for real life stuff, trading it for cash or trading it for car repairs or whatever. It was a real store of value for people.
Gaming led all of this thing. I mean, it was,
Absolutely.
digital assets have proven value in the gaming world.
Completely. And even before that, I was a domain hoarder. And, domains are sort of the original NFT. They're the original digital good that can be worth millions of dollars for one domain. So yeah, I guess I've kind of always been intrigued by this idea of a virtual stores of value and digital assets. And, Bitcoin just had all these other great things about it. And, I always thought World of Warcraft had millions of players, but you couldn't ever have, it couldn't be a reliable global currency because Blizzard Entertainment could shut down your account at any time for any reason they want. They own your account. You don't really have any right to the assets that are stored on your account. And in fact, they did regularly shut down accounts and you would lose everything. So, that was one impediment to something like that becoming more broadly used as a currency. But Bitcoin, because it didn't have the risk of any one entity just shutting it down, seemed great. It also didn't have the problem of there being a gatekeeper to getting on the platform. You didn't have to get KYC. You didn't have to have a good credit score. You didn't have to have, the approval of some authority to participate in the network, which was awesome. You know, and when we think about the unbanked people of the world, you know, often what comes to mind is like, oh, that's just people in rural India, rural Africa that are unbanked. But the reality is like 22% of households in the United States are unbanked. Most of the people in the United States under the age of 18 are unbanked. And so what do, you know, especially in a digital age where we're buying more and more things online, what do you do if you don't have a credit card or you don't have a PayPal account? You know, how do you participate in this digital economy? And Bitcoin solves so many problems for so many people around the world. That's a big part of what got me into it.
So why take the giant leap of starting an exchange?
Yeah, it's definitely not the easiest business in the world. I wouldn't recommend anyone take it on. Not just saying that, you know, to protect my my position, but you know, it's a really tough business. It's just gotten more tough over time. When we first got into it, it wasn't really clear kind of what the regulatory situation was going to be. We assumed that for a while it would be just like World of Warcraft gold, which was completely unregulated, still is completely unregulated. But in 2013, FinCEN in the United States, you know, gave guidance that basically they were treating this like any other currency, basically, and you were going to have to abide by all of the banking rules effectively to trade in it. So anyway, I got started with it because of back in early 2011, I was trading on another exchange called Mt. Gox, the infamous Mt. Gox. If you've been in the space, you know, everyone knows someone who got wrecked on Mt. Gox at some point. They're still in bankruptcy, but I basically, you know, back in June of 2011, Mt. Gox got hacked for the first time that we know of. I happened to go out there to try to help them get back on their feet. Coming out of that, realized, you know, while Mt. Gox was down, they were like 99.9% of the trading volume at the time, back in 2011. Realized that, you know, they were down for like 2 weeks, and during that time, there was no price discovery. People were freaking out. Merchants couldn't take payments because they needed to convert it instantly. There were all these issues, so I kind of thought, well, there ought to be another exchange. We can't have just one exchange. And I also wasn't totally sure that like Mt. Gox was going to be that one exchange that was really going to execute really well and do everything, you know, the way that it needed to be done. And we kind of had this view that in order for Bitcoin really to become mainstream, there had to be more industry players that were really taking the business seriously and that were willing to invest in educating regulators and educating law enforcement and being that real solid example in the space that could do things the right way, that could make everyone comfortable, that could make banks comfortable, because that's really what it's all about. I mean, what it's going to take to get more people using Bitcoin is you've got to have this bridge between the legacy system and the new system. You know, people need a way to buy Bitcoin, and you can't get a bank account if you can't show the bank that you're compliant and that you're doing everything the right way, and that, you know, in most cases we've got way better controls than even the banks that we deal with. So doing everything in a legit way and being kind of slow and methodical, putting security first, having great customer service, you know, thinking of clients coming to us as really like, these are new people coming into Bitcoin, not just coming to Kraken, but coming into the space for the first time, and they might be scared. They might have read a lot of horror stories about people losing money and everything. So, you know, we try to be a really kind of solid, reliable shepherd for them coming into the space, just to make everyone as comfortable as possible all around. Because, you know, I think really what is suppressing the price of Bitcoin is just sort of this, the idea of risk, or the uncertainty about, you know, what could Bitcoin be, or what could happen, you know, to my Bitcoin. And I think that to the extent we can reduce uncertainty about it, I think we'll see the price go up.
I mean, I must admit, you know, I opened a Kraken account a while ago, and the customer support was amazing, because I'm complicated, because I live in the Cayman Islands, everybody hates us, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, they were really good. You know, because they realize that it's like, oh God, okay, what do I do here? Because you're used to going into a bank and opening a bank account, and this is a whole different experience, and everyone's worried about it, And you're right. I mean, you have to build that kind of trust with people.
Yeah, being in the Caymans, I'm sure you didn't have an easy time, and we often hear from the compliance team. They're just like, these guys in this particular country are such a headache. Their banks don't produce these documents, or their corporate office of corporations or whatever doesn't produce any documents or whatever. And we're just like, look, we've got to kind of take a localized approach to it. Everyone in the world wants to get into Bitcoin. Our job is to help people get into Bitcoin. It's not to like be picky and only take the easy cases. We really want to build that bridge for the whole world to get on.
So when did you start Kraken, and how many people are you now?
We started in July of 2011, so we'll be 9 years old next month.
Wow.
And we are, I just checked, it was 1,126 people as of this morning.
Does that not terrify you? You were the gamer, and now suddenly you've got 1,100 people, and you spend your whole life having to deal with compliance and regulatory issues, as opposed to the kind of cyberpunk who's changing the world. Well, you are, but it's just a hard way of doing it, right?
Yeah, I try to look at it that way. I try to remind myself of that. Like often the right thing to do is not easy, and it's definitely not what I thought I was signing up for. But it's like somebody's got to do it. We can't rely on the big banks to do this. So somebody's got to do it. I pray every day for someone else to step up and say that they want to be the CEO of Kraken and they're going to do a much better job, and I can go take a vacation. But it hasn't happened yet.
But what's important is, right, why I got into the space is I was in Spain in the banking crisis in 2012. I was kind of involved in the financial crisis, and I pretty much knew we were fucked. This whole situation between, and you and I were talking off camera, there's that mix between the social elements of so many people being left out. There's the whole elements of nobody really understanding what's going on with themselves or understanding what's going on with the economy. All of this, that event horizon we all came part of, whether people came from that libertarian, technologist viewpoint, or you came from the disgruntled Wall Street guy, whatever, we were all coming towards this one narrative. And it feels like it's kind of arrived, right?
Absolutely.
Everything we feared, or this whole parallel financial system was being built for, is for now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was for 2008. And I think Satoshi thought it was for that time, and maybe saw an even bigger bubble coming and an even worse outcome coming, given how we handled the last financial crisis. Bailing everyone out kind of just delayed the inevitable, allowed this extremely fragile system to continue hobbling along, and now we're in the midst of a real economic crisis. Money printing is out of control with no end in sight. I think that Bitcoin, for me, is an obvious way to kind of step out of that system and de-risk and have something that is real and finite and predictable, and over the short term is very volatile, but over the long term has proven to be an extremely great store of value.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still the best performing asset of all time, and it's only been going for a while.
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah.
I mean, it's an extraordinary thing, and it just feels that it's becoming more and more relevant. I mean, there's a US dollar crisis going on right now, shortage of US dollars, and countries. It's now gone to central banks talking about digital currencies, which are different, but it's creating the on-ramps and off-ramps to the digital world that you envisaged, or the gaming world was already 15 years ago, where everything was digital. It feels like that's all coming. If the governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, says, "Oh, well, we can't operate in this dollar system any longer, we have to do something else." Well, that's everybody now trying to change the system, from the Bank of England through to you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be great to see some sort of international currency distributed by the UN that's gold backed, or some sort of asset backed international currency or something. I think the United States especially gets a lot of power from being able to distribute its dollars around the world, and to be able to have everyone else who's long dollars, holding dollars in their vault, absorb the brunt of the inflation that they're pouring out. So I would be surprised if the United States or any other country kind of willingly converts to any sort of asset-backed currency.
They're never going to do it.
I think you got to hit rock bottom to go that way, or people just, maybe it never happens, and hopefully people kind of step out of that sinking ship and into Bitcoin or something like it, or gold, before the thing goes completely under. I think that the idea of countries issuing these sort of Fed coins, or just tokenized national currencies, which still have all the same problems of money printing and everything, but they're tokenized now, just sort of like officially sanctioned, tethers or USDC. I think that this is going to be another stepping stone. It's going to open up another door for people to get into crypto. It'll sort of be the gateway drug, if you will. It'll teach people how to use tokens. And it's just a quick hop from there, once they've got their token wallet on their phone, to go into something more real like Bitcoin.
So how do you see this whole space developing over the next 5 years? I mean, this space moves at lightning speed and also doesn't move at all. Everyone's waiting for the kind of consumer apps, and they take forever, but everybody's building them. Where do you see this space overall in its broadest context in the next 5 years?
Really good question. Things have moved a lot slower than I thought they would have. I thought back in 2011, like, the world was going to be on Bitcoin, in the next 3 years, and we were all going to be driving around in UFOs and stuff. But it turns out things take a lot longer than you would expect. I think a lot of it has to do with the regulatory situation. In the United States especially, there's a lot of uncertainty still. And I think that's keeping a lot of participants out of the market, especially the bigger money that may have some regulatory requirements to only trade or only transact in specifically regulated assets. So I think how the regulatory situation plays out will be important to the next 5 years. Countries are taking very different approaches to it. We try to take a localized approach to the business, so we have different compliance rules all over the world. But for Bitcoin, in the asset class broadly, I think that we'll continue to see more adoption. I'm hoping that the technical components of it, the sophistication, continues to fade away into the background, and it just becomes more like, just an app, or like a PayPal app, that you don't even really think about all of the machinations, the complexity of like what happens in the dollar system, behind the scenes with the Federal Reserve, and then this banking interchange and all of this crazy stuff that goes on behind the scenes. You don't need to know about it. You just need to know, like, I have a PayPal account. I can send money to my friend through PayPal, and like, it's the easiest experience ever. And one added benefit is you don't have to trust PayPal, who can lock your account at any time. And they're notorious for doing that kind of stuff. And it's just sort of hopefully like that, but with extra benefits. I think the user experience is something we really got to work on. And as you said, there are a lot of people working on it. And I think it's just that getting it to be just dead easy so your grandma can do it, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I was talking to a few other CZ and a few others about this. Is one of the issues I have is the KYC part of it. Mm-hmm. It costs you a fortune. It costs everybody a fortune. It costs all the banks a fortune.
Yep. I'm
not sure why, and I spoke to Vinny Lingo about this earlier today, I'm not sure why somebody hasn't created a centralized but decentralized, i.e. a wallet that has all of your storage in, that everybody buys into. Because it'll collapse everybody's costs. Because you know what it's like. You go and open a bank account, you need KYC. Open a crypto account, KYC. You buy a toothbrush now, you need KYC. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And once somebody solves that, then it's a lot easier to move around, open stuff, close stuff.
Yeah, it would be nice if you could have just some sort of, if the government could issue you an ID, and I don't know, there are all kinds of reasons why maybe the government shouldn't be the one that kind of controls your digital identity.
Yeah.
But, you know, they already give you a passport. They already give you a social security number. You know, they already have control over your movements in and out of the country. It'd be nice if you could have some sort of official token or a way of signing, you know, a message for yourself digitally that proves you are who you are, that you could just take around. And yeah, instead of giving everyone the same set of 20 different documents, you just produce your token or produce your signature, and everyone knows, okay, this guy's already been vetted by the government or vetted by, you know, the post office, since they don't have anything else to do these days, or, you know, you know, some entity that that is kind of universally able to sign off on this.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like, you know, these simple things need to be solved, and then it becomes much easier for other people to adopt this whole space.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
where are you seeing the fastest growth? So I mean, you're global. Where are you seeing differences? You know, where are people adopting it? What are the different behavior patterns you're seeing across the world?
Yeah, usually we see spikes in adoption coming from countries that are having problems with their currencies, or, you know, their economies, or where there's been some sort of a negative kind of regulatory action or a bail-in type of situation. That's where, you know, like Cyprus was, you know, many years ago, there was a bank bail-in. We had like a flood of applications coming from Cyprus at the time. You know, guys coming from Venezuela. The problem is usually in these countries with failing financial systems, there are strict monetary controls, and it's really hard for these guys actually to get money out, and they rely heavily on local brokers, you know, who also have this problem of just dealing with like tons of cash, and they somehow need to get cash back into Bitcoin to sell more Bitcoin. So it's like these areas of the world where you're seeing, you know, the people really feel the effects of financial problems in the system. And then it's generally the countries that have just really great payment rails, you know, where we have bank accounts domestically, the United States, Europe, where, you know, people generally have more wealth, more money to risk, I guess, to invest in things, you know, who might be more tech savvy, who can pass KYC. You know, so those are kind of our clients. But we have clients who are local brokers as well, who are the guys on the ground in Venezuela, or the guys on the ground, you know, in Africa somewhere. And, you know, I think one of the jobs of the global exchange is to provide, you know, price discovery and liquidity to those guys. You know, we can't be all over the world on the ground everywhere. And it's great that there are these brokers that kind of cover the last mile that really get Bitcoin to their local.
Yeah, and those guys are always smart. They figure out how to get around the rules, how to get money in and out, how to get the remittance payments is sorted out. So if their kid is working and living in a different country, they can get money into their parents. You know, those guys are always smart. You know, they're hustlers. They know how to get it sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you seeing the growth of the various kind of cryptos, including stablecoins? How's that all changing in your business?
You know, there haven't been a lot of big developments in the, I would say, like the coins outside of the top 10. You know, there was a big explosion of coins end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and there was all this hype in the market. That kind of died off. Most of those projects lost like 95% of their value or collapsed entirely and shut down. The stable coins are the hot new thing. I mean, not so much as an investment. You know, the job of them is to just sort of maintain parity with whatever they've got in the vault. And you know, in the case of Tether or USDC, you know, they claim to have these dollars one for one.
Yeah, nobody's sure.
In a bank account or something, or somewhere in a vault somewhere, you know, or at least dollar equivalents, quote unquote, whatever that means. But, you know, it seems like people trust that the money is there, or they just don't care, or they think they're going to be out. They're not going to be the last one holding the bag in the end.
So you sound pretty skeptical. But
yeah.
there are some more proven entities now coming into that space, I guess.
Yeah. You know, I think USDC is one example of which is led by Circle, which is taking a very professional approach to this. I think it's super solid. Personally, I would trade it 1-for-1 with the dollar. I don't really discount USDC in my mind. I think it's basically digital dollars. It might as well be issued by the Federal Reserve. Of course, there's some counterparty risk there. They could somehow get hacked, or they could still somehow collapse. But I think it's basically digitized dollars. And I think that it's also going to be a gateway for merchants who want to accept crypto, or who get deplatformed by Visa or PayPal, who don't have another way to take payment, and maybe who don't want to bear the risk of holding Bitcoin, maybe even for an hour. So they'll take payment in USDC or Tether or DAI, or something that is less volatile than Bitcoin, and closer to a 1-to-1 redemption with the dollar.
What's your view on Libra and what's going to happen with that? Because it could be big, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have a ginormous user base built in that they could bootstrap this thing with. They seem to have changed their approach a few times. I think they're probably realizing that maybe they should have just done this rather than asking permission for it. And I'm not sure what the product is going to be at the end of the day when they come out with it. I think if it is some sort of basket, asset-backed currency, I think that's great, unless it's mostly backed by fiat currencies, and then I wouldn't see it as something I want to hold.
Yeah, from what I heard originally, I thought it was a breakthrough, because they were saying it was going to be dollars plus euros and yen and RMB. So in which case, the dollar's not the denominator.
Right.
So it should move up and down with like global money supply or something. So at least it's more stable as a start. And you'd imagine then, if they do that, when there's no reason why Kraken couldn't create their own now basket currencies, of which Bitcoin's part of it. Before you know it, you slowly start changing the whole world towards harder currencies, because the choices, people will always go to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the sophisticated user would probably prefer just to own Bitcoin and Ether and whatever is in that basket individually. I think the basket is probably appealing to the less sophisticated investor who...
It's also really appealing to people like mining companies, right? Because they've got this problem with dollar debts, dollar cash flows, and the dollar is volatile. If you're a South African, because the rand is so volatile, or if you're a Venezuelan, or if you're a Brazilian, they've got nightmares with this stuff. But if you have this basket currency as like a global currency, it helps a lot. And if it's digital and Facebook creates something that has huge adoption, well, that only helps the whole space again.
For sure. I think it could be amazing. And I think it would be widely used as a form of payment. I still worry about how centralized it's going to be. Is Facebook just creating another PayPal with, a basket token of fiat currencies?
It sounds like it, right?
Kind of does, yeah. So in that way, it's not that interesting. If you can take it outside of the Facebook ecosystem and you can custody it on your own wallet, with your own private keys, and you can transfer it to another user without Facebook's permission, I think that's still pretty great. I think it's not Bitcoin, but it's halfway there.
So what are you guys doing to get the kind of more sophisticated institutional investor into the space? Because as you said, this was a retail revolution. It was kind of the people, and people knew that this gave them an opportunity. But the institutions have been much slower. What are you guys doing to try and bring that space together?
Yeah, for the institutions, it's a lot of education. They have a lot of fears. They have their own stakeholders that they are reporting to, and I think it's always easier for them to just say that they didn't do something because it was too risky, versus do something that is risky and then it blows up, and then they have to explain why they went out on a limb to invest in this crazy asset. But I think more people like Paul Tudor Jones, of that caliber, coming in and saying, Bitcoin is legit. You should put 1% of your assets into it, or whatever. The more we can hear of that. I think it's support for other institutional investors and money managers to say, like, look, that guy who everyone agrees, knows what he's talking about, said that this is real. So, we're going to put 1% of the fund into it. What could go, how much harm could it do? And it's a hedge against everything else. It's discorrelated from the rest of the market. So I think just more of that happening because most of these money managers are followers, and they don't want to stick their neck out and bet on something that only they see that they just couldn't sell somebody else on. So we do a lot of education. We try to get people up to speed. Ultimately, I think it comes down to these guys getting permissions from their LPs, from their own investors, the people who actually own the money that they're managing. And that comes from, even broader education than we can do. I think those people are being educated through the media. And, I think this is still...
That's what we're doing, really.
Yeah.
We've been doing exactly that. Just, just widening the net. I mean, the second video we ever did in Real Vision in 2014 was about Bitcoin.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that is sorely needed, and there's so much bad information out there. The major media publications, even the ones that are known for covering the economy and finance, just get Bitcoin wrong all the time.
They've been so slow to understand any of it.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at this space, having been in this financial markets for 30 years, all I see is everybody going into this space and all the technology side coming into the space, and it's all kind of met. And yet people like the FT don't even cover it.
Yeah.
It's like it's just not news. Like, it's extraordinary. There's a new financial system being built in front of our eyes, and nobody's covering it. Not The Economist, not the FT, not the Wall Street Journal, nobody. Yeah,
it's insane. On the other hand, it's so great that it's a revolution that is being extensively documented. We've got so many podcasts about the space. We've got all of these forums. There's crypto Twitter, where you can engage directly with any CEO in the industry any time of day. There's the whole thing is very flat. People are very accessible. Everything is on video or recorded. I wish we had this for the internet, back in the day. It would be so awesome to look back and, see how everything developed. But
yeah, it's kind of magic. It is kind of magic because you see, and even like we've had over 2 days, I don't know, we've had like 40 speakers and just panels and debates. We've had a Slack channel. So we thought, we'll try a Slack channel, see if people want to talk. 1,500 people have been talking all day to each other. I mean, that's awesome. I've never seen anything like it. People are so passionate about it. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think when you get it, you just become enamored with it, and I think you realize all the problems that it solves and what it can do for the world, and it's hard not to become a fanatic. And
So how do you think of the space personally? Are you a Bitcoin only guy? Are you broadly interested in the space? Are you interested in the VC side of it? How are you looking at the space?
Yeah, not a Bitcoin only guy. I'd say like heavily a Bitcoin guy. I think that there's room to have other stores of value and other payment networks and tokens that do other things that are specialized, for a purpose. So I kind of see Bitcoin as the digital gold, or the gold standard, in terms of like a store of value. Ethereum does a bunch of other stuff. We have smart contracts. There are other networks that do smart contracts. I like that there's a variety and that there's competition happening. And, it's something to remember, is that it's still very early days and anything could happen. There could be a new coin that appears tomorrow that blows everything else away that, most people in the world still don't have Bitcoin. So, when we think like, what could possibly disrupt Bitcoin? Well, I thought that about MySpace too. It was like, MySpace has got a lock on the social network, right? But yet something better came along, and overnight, it completely replaced MySpace. So I think there's still a possibility for something like that to happen. But Bitcoin does have a massive head start. It's got all of the brand recognition. It's got 10 years of people beating on it, looking for security problems. Regulators understand it. So it's got a tremendous amount going for it. I think it would be very hard to overcome everything that it has built. But I think people should look at other coins too. Purpose-built coins.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on in the space. It depends which problem you're trying to solve. I mean, everyone's trying to, there's many problems we're all trying to solve at the same time, and that's what makes it super interesting, because it's not just one thing. Or, here's this new thing which is digital gold. No, that white paper opened up everything.
Yeah.
The whole can of worms of, okay, we can change almost every part of the financial architecture and the database architecture of the entire world in a much better way. I mean, it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, and these things are, just one more comment on that. These things are, they're becoming federated as well. Like in the early days of the internet, you had these kind of like isolated networks. And then eventually they became federated, where you could actually email people on different internet service providers. And Bitcoin and crypto is kind of going in that direction. I mean, now you have some cross-chain swaps where you can actually, on the blockchain, just literally do like one asset for the other atomically, programmatically. And, I think we're going to see more of that, where these assets actually become interchangeable across chain. So, the problems of them kind of being isolated blockchains, I think, is going to get diminished over time as you have these kind of connections built between the different chains.
Yeah, and that makes a massive difference then, because you're not building these, and you can tell the space is still very tribal. Everybody protects their own turf, and that's okay, because everyone's trying to build everything that they can. But the point being is they're all going to have to come together. I know there's a bunch of people who'd like it not to happen, but really, it's all going to work better if it all comes together.
Yeah,
and everything will have its place within that architecture and that hierarchy.
For sure, and your asset's going to be more valuable if people have more access to get it. If more people can buy it, if I don't have to go to an exchange to buy Ether, if I can do a cross-chain swap directly from Bitcoin, that's probably good for the price of Ether. So I think at the end of the day, it's just good for everyone to be more connected.
Yeah, I mean, the network effect is built on connections. The more connections you have, the better the network effect. Yeah. And the more of a moat you have, the less of a network effect you'll get. So,
absolutely.
It's absolutely crucial, I think, that happens. But the big question is, why the hell does Bitcoin not go up every day? Why is it that what is going on at 10,000? What's your thought process behind this?
I don't know. I was asking the same question at 20,000. Why is it not already 2 million?
But I'm not asking for why it's not, the price isn't higher. That's patience, that's investing. It's just, it's weird that we've just gone through this enormous event, which is so clearly positive for Bitcoin, and it gets stuck at 10,000. So my particular view of it, that the amount of Bitcoin derivatives may be part of it.
That could be. The spot markets are definitely very intertwined with the futures markets, and there are reasons why people would want to suppress the price or move it in one direction or the other. I think it's really interesting that there hasn't been a massive flood of more people coming in. However, I think a lot of people in the world are in a really uncertain position. They don't have like discretionary income at this time. They don't know when they're going to go back to work. They don't know how much money they should leave in the bank. So I think they're de-risking and
but what's weird is, why did Robin Hood get all the money? That's what I don't get, right? If the equity market manipulated by the Fed is basically the enemy, and most younger people get that, why didn't it go into Bitcoin? It's just fascinating human behavior, right?
Yeah, I think part of it is that it's so easy to get onboarded there, right? Because the problem that really triggers the high KYC requirements is going from fiat to Bitcoin, because that's seen as like a high money laundering risk. Going from fiat to stocks is not seen as a risk, because you can't take your stocks and go buy drugs with it, down the street. That's not what people are worried about. So it's much easier to get onto a trading platform for equities or for options, which is what it seems like most people are doing, is trading these like ridiculous high leverage options contracts.
Exactly.
who don't know what they're doing and they're getting blown up. And that's, a tragedy. But I think that's just it, is like the ease of onboarding makes it very attractive. And also, I think that those markets, the extreme leverage that's available makes them attractive. The leverage from these options contracts that people are using. I mean, it's sort of like comparing a casino to an actual stock brokerage. I think that people are attracted to the gambling aspect of some of these like extremely high leverage options contracts, and I think it's in a way become gamified. So I think that's what's going on there, and I think that that's mostly young people that I don't know, maybe they got a check, or maybe they're just not thinking long term or being responsible, and they're like, whatever, all or nothing. Let's just see
that's
what
right.
happens.
If you got given free money, right, you discount it to zero often, unless you're desperate for it. But most people had multiple sources of income because they were either furloughed and had some support, or multiple government supports. So if you get given a physical check and you still know you're getting 600 a week, and you might get something, you think, oh, let's see if I can make some more money with this.
Yeah, put it all on black. Yeah, I think that's what's going on. So I don't think it's like, how can I invest this money in a long-term strategy, to hedge my retirement savings or whatever. I think it's just like, how can I triple my money overnight?
Yeah, and there's no sports betting, so.
And the casinos are closed. Yeah, so it's the next best thing. 100x leverage options is from the comfort of your own home. Is the next best thing.
So how do you see, just to wrap up, how do you see the next 2 years play out, this kind of economic, societal thing, that we've all been looking for? How do you think it plays out? I mean, look, none of us have a crystal ball, so we don't know. But how do you think it will resolve itself? Is it crisis?
I feel like at some point we've got to face the music. We can continue to print money here and try to, this is to the benefit of people in the United States, to the detriment of everyone else in the world who's holding dollars. I don't know how much longer people are going to want to continue to hold dollars. Once people don't want to hold dollars anymore, I think the United States is going to see massive amounts of inflation be realized, domestically. I feel like there's so much uncertainty. There's so much chaos right now. Europe is breaking apart. There are states in the U.S. that want to break off. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think there's just a lot happening. There are a ton of terrible policies. I think that we can drag it out again. I think we could drag this out for another 5 years, but at some point, I think it's all going to come crashing down. I think if everyone just kind of casually started buying Bitcoin, it could be a way to kind of sidestep the train that's coming, and not really, have to take the impact. But apart from that.
So let's say that the system shuts down tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Is the parallel financial universe ready for that yet? Or does it need more time? I mean, we've got Bitcoin. Okay, that's pretty perfect. It does what it does. It's not a great payment mechanism, but it's pretty good for a store of value. It's the best thing any of us have ever seen for that. But is the rest of it in place yet? Are we ready?
I think we could function on Bitcoin tomorrow if we had to. We've got a bunch of layer 2 solutions in place. So not everything has to happen on the blockchain. For example, all of the trading that happens on Kraken is in a database that we control. It's not like out on the blockchain somewhere. And when money moves around inside of Kraken, it's not on the blockchain. It's just in our internal ledger. So you can take a lot of load off of the blockchain just by doing most of the transactions through these sort of centralized custodians. And it's not great to have all your money tied up with a custodian like that, but it does take pressure off of the blockchain. So I think we could scale, if we can use these sort of layer 2 solutions. I think the problem is then, if we're talking about the traditional banking system, if that's completely frozen, no wire transfers were happening, everyone's bank accounts were locked. Maybe you have the cash that you had under your mattress, but like that's it. I think we see the price of Bitcoin and other crypto just skyrocket because that's all people have left to trade with, unless you want to go to like bartering, cigarettes and coffee and bullets and whatever, I think we see the price of crypto skyrocket and people start using that as a medium of exchange.
I tell you, I studied closely the 2004 Argentinian crisis, the Corralito, when they stole all of the dollars out of the bank accounts and converted them into pesos and then devalued by 90%.
Yeah.
Right, so it destroyed everybody. So there was a guy blogging from that time about, okay, what really happens when a currency gets devalued by 90%? The most interesting thing was there was no money. So, Argentina is a food-rich country. No food was grown because the farmers couldn't get diesel for their tractors. So that was really interesting. A food-rich country ends up with no food. Wow. But also, people who had gold coins and gold bars, anybody who lived outside of Buenos Aires or one of the big cities couldn't trade them because nobody knew how to value them. If I brought you a gold bar today, you have no fucking clue if it's 12 karat gold, 24 karat gold, 18. So
yeah, loaded with tungsten.
We're not doing it. So what they did was traded wedding rings and stuff like that and just wrote everything as 18 karat gold. Wow. So they jewelry traded because everyone kind of trusted jewelry. But you couldn't use the other things. So
interesting.
It's really interesting, bullets had value, stuff like that. So it was fascinating to see what happens. And gold didn't really work very well in that situation. Barter worked better than most things. But I think, I think if we can get enough people into this digital world, it gives people options.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get away from government and the interference of others on the individual. So
for sure, it's really about having a choice and having an insurance policy for yourself. In the event that everything collapses and you're frozen out of your bank account and your dollars are worth nothing, what do you have to trade with other than your wedding ring? And just putting 1% of your portfolio into Bitcoin, in this scenario that we're talking about, the value of your Bitcoin goes up 1,000,000%. So 1% is going to be enough to get you through the crisis and get you back to where maybe start earning your income in terms of Bitcoin at that point. But it's gonna help you ride it out. And I think it's just such a small price to pay for an insurance policy that's going to pay off. That'll save your life at some point. Especially when it looks like the train is coming down the tracks. And right now we're standing in the way.
Yeah, and also just to finish off this is why you built Kraken. This is why you've taken all of the pain to go through what you didn't expect to do, which is build a big business with all the people and regulatory stuff and dealing with governments and authorities and all of that. But you did it for this.
Absolutely.
And here we are. We're facing that event horizon, potentially. We don't know. But, if you hadn't have done it, nobody'd be ready.
Well, yeah, I guess that's part of the story for everyone in the space is you got to kind of build it and hope that they come. And, I think it was clear from 2008 that that we still had a reckoning to come. And, Satoshi saw that. And, we believed that we were building for the inevitable. And we really needed to try to get as many people onto the ark, before the flood came as we could. And, we're still working on it. There's still too many people that don't have Bitcoin yet, but that's our job.
That's a great expression, the ark. Listen, Jesse, thank you ever so much for coming on to Real Vision and part of this crypto gathering. It's been great to have you here.
Thanks for having me again on Real Vision.
Yeah, we'll get you back again at some point, no doubt.
Awesome. All right. Thanks again. Have a good one.
And you.
I was wrong to say I wouldn't change